Okay, I request all the participants to please mute their mics.
Yeah.
This I can send by WhatsApp.
Yeah, please send by WhatsApp, sir. Yeah, that will be better for a minute.
All right. So,
Devers, just 1 minute, yeah? Devers, we will start
yes,
in
yes.
1 minute.
Okay, okay, not an issue.
Yeah, got it, sir. I think no, I don't think. No.
WhatsApp it also.
Okay. Ah, yeah. Okay, so Devers, shall we start?
Yes, sir, you can start now.
Okay, so we are live on YouTube.
Yes, sir, we are live.
Okay, so good evening, all. I'm Dr. Ajit, a National Director at WHF. So today we are here again, with the webinar, with the most awaited webinar, what we were planned in our Heartbeat conference, but we couldn't do it because of some busy schedules, and we had long list of webinars and conferences during our Heartbeat. We have conducted almost more than 50 webinars and sessions during Heartbeat in 1 week. So we thought like not to take your much time in Heartbeat, and we will conduct this webinar after some time. And today is the day when we have called Dr. Mukund Prabhu sir to speak on research ethics. So I'll just give a brief introduction of sir. Sir is from Kerala, and he did his MBBS from Government Medical College, Calicut University, University of Calicut, and then his MD in Internal Medicine from the Calicut University again, and then he did DM Cardiology from Sri Chitra Trinil Institute of Medical Science and Technology, Trivandrum. Then sir did the postdoctoral fellowship in cardiac electrophysiology. After that, he went to Melbourne Hospital, Melbourne, Australia, from January 2018 to December 2018 for clinical fellow in electrophysiology and pacing. So he's expert of electrophysiology. And now sir is working as assistant professor at Department of Cardiology, Sri Chitra Trinul Institute of Medical Science and Technology, Trivandrum, Kerala. He has been in Kasturba Medical Cardiology for almost 1 year with us. So now he's here with us to speak on research ethics. Sir is a perfect researcher. He has published more than 10 papers in more than 5 impact factor journal. And less than 5 impact factor, he has multiple papers. So he's a perfect researcher in cardiology. I always admire him. Yeah, definitely, sir. And sir, over to you. We are very glad to have you here to speak about research ethics.
Ajit, for that kind introduction. Actually, I always thought I am not the fit speaker for this topic. My only link with research ethics is I am a researcher myself. And Ajit may be a better speaker because he's building a doctorate in a hard way. Nonetheless, I will make my humble attempt. Per se, not my area of expertise. So I've tried to make it interesting by including some stories and all. And I hope the target audience is undergraduate level audience. And
Yeah, yes,
I'll go slow and I'll stop my video to improve the transmission quality, and I'm sharing my screen.
sure, sir.
Feel free to interrupt if you have any.
I think audience can message in the chat box, so we can take up the message in between also, no problem. I'll take up the messages, sir.
Just a minute, this is stuck, I think. I'm not, yeah. So let's start with the story.
Yeah.
The story starts in 1796 when Edward Jenner, we all know Edward Jenner, who invented the smallpox vaccination, perhaps the first vaccination in the history of mankind. So what he did was he injected an 8-year-old child with a pus taken from a cowpox injection. Then he deliberately exposed the kid to an infected carrier of smallpox. This experiment was fortunately successful, as we all know it, and now, down the lane, almost 250 years later, we stand in the era where we have already eradicated the smallpox. But whatever standards you consider in the current era, this method would be regarded as undoubtedly unacceptable. It was just a serendipity, may not be serendipity, it was luck that nothing happened to the kid, and it defied all the current research ethical standards. But still, nonetheless, it was successful, and Edward Jenner will be remembered forever. So the story of research ethics has been of an evolution over centuries with shameful mishaps and the litany of failures of ethical standards throughout its history. Most infamous examples, whenever we think of research ethics, would be the Nuremberg trials during the World War II concentration camps, the Tuskegee syphilis trials recently means maybe around 50 years back, in the United States, and the Porton Down chemical experience on chemical war gas, nerve gas experiments that spanned as late as 1989. I'll strongly recommend everyone to read about these Tuskegee trials, which defied every standards in research ethics. So what is research ethics? Ethics, as we know, is a set of moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. And research ethics may be defined as doing what is morally and legally right in research. So norms of conduct that distinguish between right and wrong and acceptable and unacceptable behavior while conducting research. And there may be ethical concern at every step of the research process. Unfortunately, most of the aspects of research ethics are subjective, be it legal, moral, or ethical. Societies and communities differ in the standards of moral, what is right and wrong, as well as laws. However, as far as humanity is concerned, most of the ethical principles stand common. And there are few aspects that can be clearly formulated by legislature. And morals govern the way the research is conducted, and ethics are of paramount importance at every stage. Maybe an important question to ponder is not whether research to be done or not, but it is how we can balance or justify exposing individual human subject to risk for the sake of the advancement of science. It's an important question which needs to be asked at every step, right from contemplating the study protocol or design, choosing the topic, taking the consent, analysis of data, till up to the publication. The scenario in research ethics has been changing because the laws are changing, awareness of human rights and definitions are changing, and data protection, with the advent of technological boom, data is freely available across the web, and how to process it, how to share it, what level of privacy will be maintained. There are so many scenarios that need to be considered and addressed. And ultimately, the responsibility of every step relies solely on the researcher. Whoever the researcher, he has to ensure that the research is conducted in the perfectly ethical manner. There are multiple principles that can be garnered in the garland of research ethics, starting from data collection, the honesty, the beneficence, the autonomy, non-maleficence, integrity, respect, rules, regulations, justice, dignity, confidentiality, competence, moral principles, ethical principles, values, privacy, everything forms cumulatively what we call as research ethics. We'll briefly mention every step. Regarding honesty, the honestly reporting data is of paramount importance. There are so many examples in the history where data itself was fabricated or partly hidden or wrongly analyzed deliberately to derive an outcome that is favorable for the researcher. Similarly, results, methods, and procedures, whatever they are, need to be disclosed fully, and publication status also need to be disclosed. And at no step, fabrication, misinterpretation, or falsification of data to be done, because that data is the core thing on which any research product builds upon itself. And objectivity is also very important because all of us know human mind is heavily prone for bias. So to avoid bias, all sorts of biases, the experiment should be designed and data analyzed and interpreted, and it should be peer reviewed. Peer review is a very important step because any researcher is prone towards a bias. Only a third person can know whether it is actually genuinely coming out as true science or it's just another byproduct of the bias. Integrity is very important as a researcher. We have to keep our promises and agreements, not only to the patients from whom we acquired data, but also to the larger community, scientific community to whom we owe. Research is done not for researchers' benefit, but it's for the larger benefit of the society as well as the science. So we have to strive for consistency of thought and action, and sincerity should be there at every step. We go to another story. This is a Nobel Prize winner, Robert Millikan. He got Nobel Prize in 1923 for what he did in 1909 onwards. He devised oil drop experiments to determine the charge of an electron. And as we know now, historians as well as journalists who studied Millikan's notebook discovered that he did not report 33 out of 149 oil drop observations that he marked as fair or poor. Also, he did not include his student's name, Harvey Fletcher, as the author of the paper that reported these experiments. And whatever has been done is done, and he has still got the Nobel Prize. But there was some serious flaw in data collection and data reporting. Carefulness is another quality any scientist or researcher need. We have to avoid careless errors and negligence. It may be difficult while analyzing umpteen number of data sets, but still we have to ensure that our fatigue or lack of concentration doesn't seep into the quality of the research that we finally produce out. So keeping good records should be a habit for any researcher, and it should be meticulously labeled, systematically analyzed, and kept and stored for future references. Similarly, openness about the data. Whenever we publish a paper, we are prone to provide the data if asked for. Again, respecting the privacy. We have to be open to criticism and new ideas. Then only meaningful research and development of science will happen. Another important aspect that can be easily, not deliberately, but we can tend to forget is respect of intellectual property. We have to honor pre-existing patents and copyrights and every other form of intellectual property. We have to give due credit to the published data. Whoever has previously done similar works, whoever inspired us for our current work, and any methods or results we should not share without permission. And whenever it is due, we have to give the credit. Plagiarism is a very common practice, especially in the modern technological era, and it should be a strict no whenever we indulge in the research process. This is one of the most famous scientific controversies. This entire Wikipedia page on this, the calculus controversy. It happened between the great Isaac Newton and German mathematician Leibniz. Both of them independently invented calculus. But whereas both of them personally never were into engaged in a fight, the British school as well as the German school always fought for years or decades regarding who invented the calculus. Whereas the credit was duly to be shared between these two because both of them independently invented it. In contrast, Charles Darwin, as we know, when he developed his theory of evolution, he was forced to remain silent for 20 years just because of the fear for contemporary society. The society at that time was more of religion and faith driven rather than science driven. And he knew that his inventions or discoveries would rattle the theological beliefs. So he kept silent for 20 years after his famous voyage in HMS Beagle, where he collected the specimens in 1934. And in 1956, he published his book, Origin of Species. His friend George Lyell urged Darwin to publish this theory in early 1950s because he happened to read a similar paper by Alfred Wallace, and which proposed a similar theory, and he wanted Darwin to establish the precedence. But Darwin decided to share the credit with Wallace because both of them independently happened to discover the theory of evolution. So it's the responsible behavior from any researcher we can expect. Confidentiality is yet another issue, especially when we are dealing with sensitive information. We have to keep every communication and data confidential, and any papers or grants submitted for publication, personal records, trade or military secrets, everything need to be kept confidential. Publication is another step where everyone tend to get biased towards themselves, and responsible publication is getting more and more difficult these days, as we recently saw 2 of the COVID papers being withdrawn from the reputed journals. Publication definitely advances our research and scholarship credits, and the publish or perish culture is fast growing up, and it has actually contributed to much wasteful as well as duplicative and falsified data in science. So responsible publication is another thing that has to be groomed right from early days in the career of any researcher. Similarly, responsible mentoring. We have to help to educate, mentor, and advise students as a teaching faculty or research guides. It's our responsibility to educate the students how to conduct, how to give credit, how to remain honest, and how to scientifically approach any problem. Similarly, respect for colleagues and treating them fairly, especially for senior guys, is very important. All researchers have a social responsibility, and we have to strive to promote social good and prevent or mitigate social harms in the name of research, public education, and even with our whatever things we are publishing. Non-discrimination is not purely restrained to research; it happens in any field, and avoiding discrimination against colleagues or students in the name of gender, race, ethnicity, or any other factor purely against scientific spirit and should never be promoted. And each of us should strive to maintain the level of competence, our professional competence and expertise. It doesn't complete when we get our degree or qualification or training. It is ever evolving process, and we have to strive hard to remain competent, update with the developments, and this should reflect in our research as well as design. We should be aware of the laws wherever we are conducting research. Knowing and obeying the relevant laws and documentation is extremely important in responsible research. And not only human research, animal care is also, animal ethics and how the way we deal with animals is also gaining importance since last 3 decades. We have to show proper respect and care for animals whenever we conduct research on them. And we should never conduct unnecessary or poorly designed animal experiments just because they are not in a position to express their feelings or pain. Human subject protection has gained extreme importance since last 3 or 4 decades. And when conducting research on human subjects, minimizing harms and risks and maximizing benefits is the primary responsibility of the researcher, and so as to protect dignity, privacy, and autonomy of the subject. Again, we'll visit the history. 1885, Louis Pasteur administers an experimental rabies vaccine to a 9-year-old Joseph Mister without testing it on animals first. This is extremely unacceptable in the current standards, but still, in those times, when research ethics were not as evolved, anyone could escape by doing such experiments. And in 1894, Robert Bartholomew, this is the person whom we are credited for whatever electrical stimulation on brain we are doing nowadays, as well as localizing the motor functions or areas of the brain. We owe this to Robert Bartholomew. What he did was, in a first in human incidents, inserted electrode into a hole in the skull of his maid, Mary Rafferty, and she had a tumor. He got informed consent, and he noted small amounts of electrical current can cause bodily movements, and larger amounts elicits pain. Soon after this experiment, the patient actually fell into coma and died, and Robert Bartholomew was heavily criticized for what he has done. But he had taken a consent. So it's highly unethical in current era, but still it happened not very long ago, just about 120 years ago. This is another mishap, 1897. This Italian bacteriologist who believed that yellow fever was caused by a bacillus wanted to prove his theory. He injects yellow fever bacteria into 5 patients without their consent, and all of them develop disease and die. We have stakeholders in research, importantly participants, researcher, and the funding body. Data collection is the responsibility of researcher, and he has to make the participant clear that undertaken research is beneficial for the society and only relevant information would be collected. Obtaining a consent doesn't mean that we can freely use the data as and when we need it. Data should be specifically used and as minimum data to be used as what we need for the experiment. And while seeking consent, informed consent implies the subjects are made adequately aware of the type of information researcher wants, why the information is being sought, and what's the purpose of the research, and how it will directly or indirectly affect them. The research participant subject should be fully aware what all data will be collected, how it will be used, why it is done, what will be the advantage as well as disadvantage that he may suffer. All of us know Watson and Crick. They are so famous, and we owe them a lot for understanding of human DNA or DNA for that matter. And they were duly awarded with the Nobel Prize in 1962. But most of us may not know that they secretly obtained the key X-ray diffraction data from another scientist, Rosalind Franklin, without her permission. Not only that, Franklin was already dead when they received the Nobel Prize, and her contribution never came into light. Another highly unethical thing is providing incentives to the subjects. It's unethical to provide any sort of inducement or incentives to the respondents for their participation. Participants should not take part in research because of privilege they are bound to get, but they should participate because of realizing the importance of study. While seeking sensitive information, especially those on drug use, sexual behavior, we should understand that it is not unethical to ask such questions as long as the research requires those information. Unless the research requires, we should never ask the patient data that is prone to be sensitive. And researchers should take a non-judgmental approach whenever dealing and acquiring or analyzing such data to respect the privacy of the patient. The most important and inevitable thing in any human research is avoiding hazardous medical experiments. Causing any sort of harm, physical, health-wise, or psychological, is not acceptable in any human research. Similarly, causing discomfort, anxiety, causing a feeling of being harassed, invasion of privacy, or demeaning procedure, all need to be avoided. All of this has happened even in the 20th century, and unless a deliberate attempt is made, it is likely to happen in the future also. Another infamous example, Clara Maas, a nurse, 25-year-old, died in 1901 as part of an experimental inoculation of the yellow fever. In early 20th century, the theory of mosquito as a cause of vector in yellow fever was not yet proved, but there was strong suggestions that mosquito was the vector and it was caused by a virus. So Walter Reed, who conducted these experiments, took a written informed consent. Perhaps for the first time in history of human research, the written informed consent was taken, and she was explained that she may get yellow fever and she may die out of it. And she was given an incentive of $100 in US gold. Not only she, but two Cuban Spanish immigrants also died as part of the experiment, which created a public outcry, and the research was stopped. Maintaining confidentiality, we already discussed. The information should only be used for the research purpose. Personal information, especially the sensitive one, or one that can cause harm to the individuals, if shared, should be remain confidential. And anonymity of the participant should be ensured by the researcher whenever dealing with such identifying information. Data processing is another area where bias can easily seep in. So we have to deliberately and consciously avoid bias. We should not hide or misinterpret any outcome to conclude a certain predefined result. We should approach the problem with an open mind and see with the data what the data postulates, rather than trying to fit the data into our preconceived notions. Researchers have to use the data in fruitful researches. They should not overlook any valuable data. And inappropriate methodology and biased sampling and using invalid instrument, wrong conclusion being drawn, everything should be deliberately avoided. There are some ethical considerations for the funding body as well, because the funding body is so important in conducting meaningful research. We have to ensure that the funding body doesn't have any voice while selecting the methodology, prohibiting the publication, or imposing any restriction on the research, irrespective of what outcome the research is going to give. It is extremely unethical for the funding body to misuse the data. The funding body can potentially prove or disprove certain agenda using the data they have, and using the data in any purpose like this is considered unethical. These are the major principles that have to be considered in research ethics. And in history, we have seen that at every level, there are ample examples of mishaps. And over the last 4 or 5 decades, we have become more aware of research ethics. And in 1964, the World Medical Association formulated the Helsinki Declaration, and it has been since then revised numerous times, and last being in 2013. So, in the current era, any human study is expected to follow this principles in the Helsinki Declaration. Throughout the 16th and 70s, there was increasing awareness in animal rights, conducting experiments on animals, and a guide for human care and use of laboratory animals was formulated in 1963 in the US. In 1975, Peter Singer published Animal Liberation, which explicitly mentioned that any animal research is immoral. So, animal research is another gray area where we try to extend our ethical behavior or thinking, and whatever said and done for the animal, from the viewpoint of the animal, the research is always unethical. In 1989, the NIH requires all graduate students on training grants receive education in how to conduct responsible research. This is the Declaration of Helsinki. Right from 1964, it has been periodically revised, and last update being in 2013. This is one of the most important declarations or research ethic principles, guides any researcher conducting study on human subjects need to be aware of. This is another brilliant book, Betrayers of the Truth, published in 1982. The book claims that there is more misconduct in science than researchers want to admit. And even goes to one step ahead and suggests that famous scientists, including Newton, Gregor Mendel, Robert Millikan, were not completely honest with their data. And with this book came the era of fraud busting in science, ample of examples of which we are seeing in the last 1 or 2 decades. Papers being published and retracted, data fabrication, allegations, and so on. This is my last slide. This is the Royal Scientific Society, formulated in as early as 1662. They brought about the process of peer review to maintain high standards and quality in early 1660s. And as the motto of the society goes in Latin, nullis in verba, take nobody's word for it. This may be not only for science, for ethics also, we have to apply the same principle, take nobody's word for it. We have to personally verify at every step we are ethical, we are consciously making an effort to prevent any malpractice or unethical practice in our research. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful, workshop. And we got very new things to know, and we were not aware of the history as well. We just read the ICH guidelines and all so many things, but we were really not aware of these things. Yeah. So first we will ask our. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and we have to learn so many from mistakes others have committed, so that we not repeat the same thing.
Yeah.
In this career, yeah.
So I will invite our audience to ask their questions.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, I'm not able to switch on my video. I'm trying to do it.
No problem. So no problem. It's fine. It's fine. It's no problem. No problem, sir.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to ask any question to sir, they can ask directly. They can raise the hand and ask their questions.
I'm sure Ajit will be a better person to answer most of the questions, but nonetheless, I'm here.
Sir, until you are here, I'm nothing to, I'm nowhere to answer. You will be the, perfect person to answer the question. So guys, yes, please ask your questions. So, sir, I have few questions.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, as you know, like from our MCI side, or we can say now our government guidelines says that in PG, our post graduation in medical science and medicine and all, they have to publish. At least they have to do the thesis and they have to publish few papers or one paper at least. So what do you think about that? Because in India, I think as I have seen, as per my experience in into the research, I have seen
Yeah.
many of our residents or many of our registrars. They are not interesting at all. They're not interested in research because they have lot of work from clinical side. They have lot of work from
Yeah.
wards in OPDs and all. And personally, they do not have interest in research. Half of them
Yeah.
at least. So
Correct.
somewhere they just they do something. They just
Yeah.
do something, and it will be done by them, or they take help of someone else and they do that. So don't you think it's
Yeah.
also a misconduct of research, misconduct in research? And
Yeah.
what
I
is your
perfectly
views
agree
and
with you.
what should be there?
I perfectly agree with you. Maybe there are multiple levels which we need to look into why this is happening. First and foremost, maybe we don't have an organized data collecting system in most of the hospitals. If you want to collect data, there's no computer records or a well-established medical record department from where you
Yeah,
can, even if you are willing to put your work, effort, time, hours, everything, still you may not end up getting in perfect data.
yeah,
Second thing is maybe our time balance when you are, especially you're in clinical work, you're so much overworked that you
yeah,
don't have time to spare. There's no dedicated time for research. Research is
yeah.
just an out, a byproduct of whatever you are doing in your mundane day-to-day activities, rather than a focused, dedicated effort.
Correct.
Perhaps lack of time as well. And third thing, maybe we don't have funds, adequate funds to. We have to contribute something new. Is always expensive. Rather
True.
than conducting a retrospective study based on whatever data we have,
Yeah.
designing an experiment, exploring an area that is unknown, it's always an expensive effort. And funding also becomes a major limitation whenever we do.
True.
On top of that, we are forced to publish to get our degree means it
Yeah.
somewhat tends to propagate the culture of publish or perish. And
Yes.
some of the ethical principles are floated.
True, sir. And it's not only for the PGs or our, our residents or our super specialty students. It is even I have seen now UGC and other government organizations or bodies. They are, giving the promotions based on the published papers as well, even in the
Yeah,
universities, as I know. So
yeah,
this is also, I feel, this is a forceful, research, and
yeah,
there are the high chances of mishaps, right?
yes. We are forced to do something. You always give priority to yourself rather than going behind research ethics. Unfortunately, that's a scenario maybe everywhere, not only in India.
Not
The
only in India,
publisher perish
exactly.
culture has, yeah, so many papers, even from US, recent ones. We have seen two major journals retracting papers, COVID papers, in last
Yes,
3 months maybe,
yes.
giving
I'm
undue importance and undue credit to publication always
mhm,
tends to breed poor quality research and science.
correct. Um, as I know, I think you also have heard of. I think 6 months back or 8 months back, when I was, finishing my PhD from KMC, a big controversy happened. Not in KMC, like it was happened. It happened in some great government university in North India. So Nature
Mhm.
has retracted some 15 papers of one person.
Yeah,
He was the chairperson of a big government organization, and he has published all the papers in Nature. And
yeah,
later they came to know that all the pictures were taken from some other western data, and they have just
yeah,
manipulated the pictures and published in Nature.
yeah. That's correct. I'm aware of that. Similarly,
Yeah.
Nature has retracted another Iranian group,
Yes.
15 or 20 papers from the Iranian group. There are so many
Yes.
examples in this, like Indian Canadian that Ranjit, I think, and he has done a study for comparing baby feeds, Nestle
Yes.
versus so many companies. He has declared himself nutritional immunology expert.
Yeah.
This is maybe in 2 or 3 decades back. And without
Correct.
conducting an experiment with the
Hmm.
same or similar, near similar form baby formula feeds, chemical formula, he has
Yeah.
recommended two of them to be safe and to prevent allergy, whereas the other two he has recommended against. And his colleagues later told that the data has been published even before it was analyzed.
Right.
So such mishaps are throughout happening in the history, maybe worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
we are just aware of what happening here. The only thing is to train medical students or any student in research right from the young days, right from the MBBS days, maybe.
yeah. True.
Yeah.
So
And take away the publish or perish type of
correct,
mandations.
correct, sir, correct. So I will just take a few questions from the chat. How to approach for a government job in CR field, clinical research field? I think that is a tough question, but of course you can.
It may not be. I'm not the best person to answer that.
We are not the best person to answer this, but you can, go to the government sites, ICMR site, and other CSIR site or DBT DST site. So there are the they always update every week or every day. They update about the jobs, whatever jobs are available for in the clinical research field. So you can look into that definitely. So do we need to take consent from patients in retrospective study? Not at all. No, no, Sai Srikar, no, we do not have to take patient consent form in the retrospective studies. No need. Uh, Sir, kindly throw some light into the ethical aspect, especially assent in the research involving children's. So, what do you say about this?
Children actually, it's a very sensitive topic again. Children are not capable of giving informed consent themselves. So
Right,
we have to involve their parents. Who is the legal guardian? Usually it's the parent, especially in India. But whoever is the legal guardian, they should be involved in while taking the consent. And the consent forms are actually more rigorous than what you take in adults. Not only for children, even for studies involving genetics, we have rigorous consent forms, and we have to ensure that a legal guardian understands that and give the consent to it. Again, based
right.
on institution to work, some principles may vary.
Yes.
Like retrospective studies also, technically there's no need of consent, but some institutes mandate telephonic consent at least.
Okay. Yes. And yeah. So yeah. Next question is it something regarding their immunological status like HIV still do need to take consent? No. If you are involving any human, participant in your study, you have to take consent in the prospective studies. Whatever it
Informed
is.
consent is mandatory.
It is informed
Gray
consent is
area comes
mandatory.
when the patient is not in a position to give the informed consent. For example, you have to do a study in the emergency department. You are dealing with coma patients who
Right.
come to emergency uh, with coma. So who will give the consent? Patient is not in a position to give the consent, and your research is dealing with some emergency aspect. So there's no time to explain everything. Such are the gray areas actually, but still you have clear guidelines in Helsinki Declaration. Whoever is responsible, legally responsible, and caring for the patient should give the informed consent.
Yeah, a legal representative is mandatory to give the consent in case of children's or the patient or participant who is not available, or sorry, who is not eligible, like in the psychiatric
Yeah,
patients cases in this psychology, when a patient is really mentally disabled. In that case also you have to ask their legal representatives to sign the consent form. Definitely it is mandatory. Okay. Can you please tell about researches in rehabilitation field? I'm not aware, sir. If you can answer.
uh, it's not my field. I apologize.
Yeah, even yeah, true.
It's a very vast field, so I don't think we can comprehensively deal with every question.
Okay, what are the ethical aspects concerned in researches involving pregnant women? Any human participant, you need to take informed consent. Sony,
Yeah.
you have to take informed consent, whether it is pregnant women or whether it is elderly patients or participant, whether it is healthy participant, anything, you have to take informed consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
And the consent also should explain that withdrawing from the research will not alter the treatment.
yeah,
We are dealing with something that has to do with the treatment.
yes. So, sir,
Patient should
one
not be in
more.
a position where he is forced to give the consent. It should be voluntary. He should be well
Correct.
informed, and he has to be given time to understand that and ask questions and clarify his doubts.
Yeah. So, sir, one question from my side. As I've been a part of many, international global clinical trials in heart failure. So, these are driven by pharmaceutical companies and, NIH or big organizations. So they provide, kind of daily ways or travel support to the patient or participant who come to give their blood, or who come for the follow-ups for their trial. So does it really affect the selection of the patient, or participation of the participant into the study? Does it matter?
No, actually, it is actually considered as a basic courtesy. Whenever your patient is coming just for research purpose, the researcher is bound to meet the expenses of travel. That is not regarded as incentive, but it is a basic courtesy which we should follow. Whenever patient has to spend money just for the purpose of research, it's not patient's responsibility to fund it, but it's the researcher's responsibility. But you cannot give incentive beyond whatever is the actual expense. You cannot give incentive for participation in research. That is considered unethical.
Right, but
Otherwise, not only ethical, it is mandatory.
it is mandatory, yeah. But explaining these things before starting the trial, or it makes the participants very much excited to come for their follow-up. As I've seen in our trials also, usually they do not come. If we call them like, you have to come on 2 months follow-up or 3 months follow-up, they do not come. But when we tell them like, we are giving you this kind of support, they come. And they just
Yes.
very much excited about the research and participation.
Yeah.
So I
Again,
felt
that's
that, yeah.
an unfortunate state of affairs, because what it means is patient is not understanding the role of this research and how it is going to be useful to the scientific community as well as society, and similar patients like him. They're just interested in
Right.
they will get whatever travel expense, and hence they are coming. Maybe because of resource depletion, the way we are living, there's a means poor socioeconomic status. Everything may be contributing for such and lack of education and awareness. Everything may be contributing to that attitude, but definitely it is not a good attitude for a healthy research.
Right. Sir, one very interesting question I'll take from chat box.
Yeah.
What you think about the gift authorship?
Gift authorship is extremely unethical, and it's very rampant as well. There are so many terms, not only gift authorship, ghost authorships are also there, where someone writes for the researcher, for the publisher rather. And gift authorship,
Yeah.
there is a clear guideline who should be involved in the publication process. Treating a patient
Yeah.
per se is not eligibility that your name should come in the publication. Only if you are
Right.
involved in design of the study, collecting the data, analyzing the data, or final review of the manuscript, you have a role any of these four spheres, then only you are eligible for the authorship.
Yes.
All other authorships are actually gift authorships, and it's unethical.
Unethical, yeah, true. Okay, so okay, someone is asking, what are the ethical aspects concerned in researches involving depression? I don't think depression is really, as per my knowledge, as it was a research area in my heart failure patients as well. So depression doesn't affect that much. It doesn't affect your research or informed consent, because if you are explaining well to the patient, so they can decide if they have to participate or not. So depression doesn't matter much actually, and depression will not drive patient to participate into your study. Definitely, it's not something that you can force the patient, or it force the patient to come into your study. Definitely. Okay, is it necessary for investigations to be done free if you are doing research?
The investigation is done for the patient's care. If we are supposed to do the investigation, irrespective of whether we will do the research or not, then it need not be free. But if we are doing something just solely for the purpose of research, then it should definitely be free.
Yes, if it is really associated with your research topic or research objective, then it should be free. Definitely,
Yeah.
it should be free. Yeah, like I have an example. When we were doing, we are conducting some trial of a new Arnis or sacubitril valsartan in our patients. We were dispensing the drug to. This was phase 3 trial. So we were giving the drugs to our participants. So definitely at every visit we have to do their anti-proBNPs and a few other tests, sodium, potassium, and other electrolytes, and serum creatinine, to check the effect or the impact of drug on these parameters. So because it was really related to our study, so we had to pay for that. Other tests were not bared by us. So it is very much important, like if you are if the investigations are related to your research objective or your research outcome, anything, you have to pay for that. Why a patient has to bear the expenses for that? It is extremely unethical to be taken from the patient.
Yeah.
What are
The ethical
the
committees, I asked the same question when you submit a proposal for approval, who will bear the expenses of these tests or medications or whatever. So that policy is well designed even before the patient is recruited.
correct, sir? So yeah. So my next question is like, sir, is it really necessary to take the ethical approval for KAP or survey studies?
Sorry, I didn't get a question. Is it necessary to
Survey,
take approval?
take ethical approval for surveys like public surveys.
Maybe only thing where we don't need ethical approval is case reports or teaching type of publications where we don't use patients identifiable data. Surveys actually are not as rigorous as studies, and it perhaps based on which institution you are working, many of the ethical committees will not require it, make it mandatory to take approval.
Right.
But if you are publishing the same data, then again the question of whether ethical committee approval has been taken will definitely come in at that stage.
Yeah.
The journal will ask you, or you are supposed to admit that this survey or study was conducted after ethical committee clearance or not. So it depends on what sort of survey you are, means, for example, you are taking on sensitive information.
Yeah.
Perhaps any ethical committee will not permit you without undergoing through, like, for example, sexual behavior or use of rehabilitating drugs, recreational drugs, sorry. So such information definitely may need ethical clearance.
Yes.
I always will take IEC clearance rather than will not take. That's the safest way to do it, and the easiest way to get it published also.
Yes. Okay, so yes, someone is asking about the official WhatsApp group for WIHF. No, we do not have right now the WhatsApp group. I think because we have a huge number of members, so they are just associated with us through the emails and all. So we have our president and our vice president with us, so they can answer this question and they can write in the chat group. Someone is asking Priyans that is there any WhatsApp group for WIHF? Then one more question, sir.
Hi, yes.
Yeah, Priyans, please tell.
I'm sorry. Yes, so we do have a WhatsApp group for WIHF. So all those who are members of the federation have been added to the groups. And if you have become a member and have not been added to a group, you can contact the vice president. I'll just type the email. So you can contact that email to add you to the group.
Okay, these regional groups, right?
Yes, the regional groups.
Oh, great. Okay, so sir, one question is there, very interesting question for you. Will you just explain how can we take up electrophysiology as a career in India? It's not related to
I know who is asking this question and what is he currently being trained at?
Yeah, Janani Rajagopal. You please speak, Janani, directly. No problem. You can, unmute your mic and speak to sir. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Janani, hi.
Hi, sir. Sir, I have done my BSc in cardiac care technology.
Okay.
So I completed my course. So I was thinking if electrophysiology is, can I take up electrophysiology?
Yeah. Good question, Jenny. I really encourage you and appreciate you that you asked this. Actually, cardiac electrophysiology is of two types. What we call as cellular electrophysiology and what we call as clinical electrophysiology. For cellular electrophysiology, it's core science. You are studying about cell membrane properties, how the drugs act on them, anything related to the cardiac electrical property of the heart. So that you can pursue a PhD maybe under physiologist or cardiac electrophysiologist, and that's a different field altogether, which is still rudimentary in India. I'm not aware of much persons who are deeply engaged in the cellular level electrophysiology in India. Whereas clinical cardiac electrophysiology, you have to do medicine, then cardiology, and then do a fellowship in clinical cardiac electrophysiology, which may span from 1 year to 1.5 years, depending on which center you are choosing.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay. So, what are the patient retention strategies in any clinical trial or in any study? If you can just, put some light on.
Patient retention strategies. I'm not sure. I never faced this question. Maybe you should honestly declare everything to the patient. You should have maintain the rapport with the patient.
Yeah.
Whenever the patient has any problem, be it part of your study or not, you have to be willing to come up with help, offer the help. You should be giving them a contact number, either yourself or one of your assistants, so that they don't feel they have to have hassle-free communication. And more than that, you have to ensure that patient doesn't spend excess from his pocket just for purpose of the study. If you maintain all of this, most of the patients will comply, and you have to appreciate and positively encourage them at every step for the involvement and explain to them how important their contribution is to the study, as well as the future scientific developments that may happen in the field.
Right.
And that positive reinforcement also will encourage them to stick on to the study. And despite that, we have to admit that there will be maybe 1 or 2% of droppages, which we cannot prevent.
Right. Yeah, so constant touch with the patient, constant telephonic conversations, or of course, the help, as sir told, sir has described very well. You have to be there always for any kind of if they ask, if they are in trouble, you can help them, and there should be there should be hassle-free uh, contact or conversations with you. So that is most important to retain your patient back into your study. Yeah. So
In a
one more
sentence, you
question.
should have genuine care for the patient, and you have to express the genuine care very frequently.
Yes. Okay. So, is it important to publish paper for PharmDs to get a job in CR field? Tulsi, yes, it is recommended if you are going for the clinical research field. Then, if you have experience about the papers, research publications, or any research, whatever you have done in your college, it is recommended. But it is important or not, I don't know. But yes, it is preferably you should have some papers, 1 or 2 good papers or 1 or 2 good studies, whatever you have done in your graduation, it should be there. It is recommended if you are going for a clinical research field, or if you are going for a clinical research job anywhere, from any field, any background. Okay, I think we do not have further questions. So if anyone have any question, please ask now. We will call off the session in 2 minutes. Yes, guys. So, sir, I don't think now any more questions. Thank you very much for coming, and it is really, it was really a very much informative session, and I was waiting for almost last 3 to 4 weeks since I have been in the contact with sir about this workshop. I was very excited, and this was really helpful for our graduates and undergraduates who are attending this. And sir, it was completely full. For last 1 hour, our Zoom meeting was 100% full. All the participants were here, and even in YouTube, so many people were watching. So it was a wonderful, successful thing. So thank you very much, sir, for joining us. And
Thank you.
yes, thank you all who are participating in that, who have joined us for this workshop. Thank you very much.